All right, we're going to keep things moving. So I'm really excited about our next moderator. Funny story about him. So our next moderator is Marc Claybon from Crowe. What was really funny was his cousin was one of my closest friends in college and right afterwards. And I met him just a few years ago. And it was amazing that everything kind of came full circle. And he's become one of my closest friends, both personally and professionally. I feel really lucky to have Marc in my life. He is a wonderful person, a wonderful human being. So let's welcome Marc Claybon from Crowe for Scaling Without Breaking. Give it up for Marc.
Okay, why don't we call out the panel? Lo, Sean, David, and Gibran. So welcome everyone, excited to be here. We're going to talk about what some of the newer markets such as Ohio can learn from past launches. We're going to talk about some of the lessons learned from other state launches, how disciplined operators can scale responsibly and move forward. So why don't we start with some brief introductions of the panel, and maybe start with you, David? Where's your mic on?
Yes? Okay, there we go. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for having us. David Leider, I'm the president of Holistic Industries. We operate vertical operations in a number of markets across the country, and we are just purchased the assets of the Cannabis here in Ohio, awaiting regulatory approval, so I'm looking forward to joining the Ohio community.
Gibran Washington of Ethos Cannabis. We're a multi-state operator as well, vertically integrated. We have a presence in Ohio already, and proudly enough, we are the only cultivator in the legendary Meigs County, and in my opinion, growing the best cannabis or medicine currently in the state of Ohio. Yes, I stand on that. You can see me in the back of the room. I have products and samples.
Hi everyone, I'm Sean Scadron. I run sales across the Midwest and East Coast for Surfside. We help cannabis brands and retailers drive new customer acquisition and measurable sales with our proprietary digital advertising platform. We work nationally, so we've been able to see across emerging markets what operators do to scale effectively. And I also host a monthly networking event that meets in New York and Detroit called Third Thursday, which has been going for about 3 years in the cannabis space.
I'm Lo. I'm the founder and CEO of Heylo. We also have the brand Treehaus, which is here in Ohio. And I got my start in the industry after a career and schooling in chemistry and medicine. And I feel grateful to be able to follow both of my passions doing this in the cannabis industry now. I've had a long journey in Washington, which, to be vulnerable, has not been easy. And came out here in Ohio just about almost 2 years ago to get started with my family in Northeast Ohio, fully vertically. So excited to bring what I've learned out in the West Coast here.
Thank you. And I'm Marc Claybon, tax attorney at Crowe, which is a large CPA firm doing tax audit and consulting. But let's get right to it. We're going to start with a discussion about some of the lessons learned from past markets. We've experienced, and we've heard it over and over, there's excitement and then overbuilding and then rapid expansion and then a price compression and oversupply, and it's a cycle that we see regularly. Maybe David, let's start with you. What early indicators should operators watch for to avoid getting caught flat in that kind of cycle?
Yeah, I think focusing on some of the basics, understanding how many licenses in each municipality, understanding what the capacity that's going in from a grow perspective. You've got to look at all that, and I think you really have to think about understanding that. You can't control it fully, but you do need to understand what you're walking into when you're placing a retail location, truly understanding traffic, the amount of consumers that are potentially within your trading area, and really focus on building for the business that you believe is going to be there versus building for some hope. And I think people make there's been a lot of exuberance throughout the years, but I think people are really starting to focus on the basics these days, and you just really got to look at all the numbers and data and try and make your decisions based on that.
Thank you. It's wonderful. Gibran, what about you? Any early indicators that operators should avoid?
I mean, I think you hit on quite a few of them, and then I think Dave did as well there. But to add to it, I mean, obviously you start seeing more promotional pricing. But let's take it two different ways. First, from the retailer standpoint, what you're going to start seeing is the menu mix grow, the SKU count grow, and the velocity and the turns. If you're a retailer, I would look at any data measures, whether that's BDSA or selfless plug, hoodie, Chris is in the building somewhere. Get some of those analytical tools at your disposal so you can really understand from a retailer standpoint, what is really happening on other people's menus. When you start seeing a lot of discounting and aggressive discounting, that's usually the sign, either from the wholesale side or from the retail side, that there's some type of oversupply. And then the last but not least, as he was saying, you can't be aspirational in our industry. You need to plan for the downturn. You need to plan for the downstream and not just think if I built it, it will come. It doesn't work in cannabis. And the last thing, if you're the early indicator, is when you start seeing all of us MSOs or cultivators have the same genetics. Once you start seeing similar genetics across brands or portfolios, ultimately what happens is we have to start discounting products in order to move it. So when you start seeing repetitive genetics, that's another early indicator sign that something is about to happen.
Thank you. Well, let's follow on with that. From a capital perspective, where do you see capital misallocated often from the beginning, if at all?
I mean, I think right there in the beginning is in the canopy. I think a lot of us try to build it as big as we possibly could afford, or whatever we told our investors that was possible in terms of the grams per square foot or the cost of the product itself. Again, I think we don't put enough emphasis. I think a lot of operators in the industry got into the industry and understanding what cannabis is. They thought it was an orange, they thought it was a banana, and if I can just put a seed in it, it will grow and I'll be fine. So really understanding operationally, how I can grow and what are my things, what are the things that I'm going to do to make sure quality is consistent throughout everything that I do, day in and day out. I think those are probably the biggest ones that, I would say you could probably do a better job with capital. Well, actually, there's another big one. Stop hiring people who don't understand cannabis because they have a great resume and pay them a bunch of money to mess up your company. That is kind of what's happened in our industry. Kind of across the board, we've allowed people with CPG or retailer background, but no real cannabis connection or culture to the cannabis culture, connection to the cannabis culture rather. And they've come in and told our clientele that THC is the only thing that they should buy, and we need to bring people in the industry who understand what this plant really is, instead of bringing in all of these fancy resumes. I have one too, but I actually smoked weed since I was 10. But one of these fancy resumes are going to come in and tell you exactly what they think, Ralph Lauren would do or Voss Water would do or something like that. Those people aren't here anymore, most of them, and those that are left have pivoted, have adjusted to what the new reality is in all these markets.
David, any further thoughts?
Well, you got me by 3 years on the smoking, but that's okay. 13 was for me, but.
We will be outside after this in front of the hotel.
That sounds perfect. I think you covered the wholesale side of the business extremely well. If you think about the retail side, I think one of the mistakes that has been made a lot in the past, and I think people are really focused, is basic things like your lease. People, again, like what I said at the beginning, I need to be in this area. This is the only place I can get a license. I'll pay whatever for that lease I can, and then your cost, and then you readjust your model to fit what your costs are instead of what he said about, look at what you think that you can actually do. And I think that's a huge mistake, that a ton of that was done across the industry, and I think people are getting more realistic, and again, looking at the numbers, understanding what you can do, and not just getting screwed on just crazy lease rates, because it's just the real estate people that ultimately win that.
Thank you. So last kind of follow-up question on this to the whole group. How much of this pain that you're seeing was avoidable, or is it just kind of a natural part of being a new business in a new industry? Any thoughts on whether some of these items are avoidable, and as you get more experience?
I mean, I think there's some natural occurrences going to happen. You have a new industry, it's a new marketplace for us all to kind of learn and understand. But I think some of the things were avoidable. I think the biggest mistake as an industry that we have done is put the emphasis on THC. And what that has done from the menu shopping is creating is devaluing lower THC cannabis, full spectrum cannabis. I think that would be a great opportunity if we could just grow what we know needs to be grown instead of growing high THC flower. I think that's probably the biggest failure of the industry that we've actually have done. And I think that we really need to fully understand that everyone can't grow cannabis. I think that was probably something that a lot of early investors were told, I know how to grow cannabis, because just because you can grow cannabis in your garage or in your closet does not mean you can grow commercial grade quality cannabis. Yeah. And I don't know how many large MSOs or even single state operators actually have that dialed in.
Lo, anything, final thoughts, or?
Just that we are, it is an emerging industry in like state by state, but many states have done it before. And I think both on the regulation side as well as, when people are planning to build out or scale, that these are things that are avoidable. If you look to other states, I mean, if you look at the data, every single market follows the exact same sales trends. And so we know that the price is going to come down. And so when you're planning your business, some of these big mistakes, especially with, how much to invest in a facility, are avoidable if you just look at the data and go on data, good decisions, as opposed to promise, what you were saying, David.
Thank you. Sounds good. So let's take some of these lessons learned and kind of apply it to a market such as Ohio. Let's stick with you, Lo. Is there anything different about the Ohio market that can help avoid some of these lessons learned? Or is Ohio like any other market?
I think that Ohio does have some things that make it a little different. One, the population size, two, license ratio. It's kind of a happy medium, I would say, versus some of the other states that are way oversaturated. So that gives us a leg up as operators, whether you're a small cultivation license or independent processor versus a large scale vertical integrator. It creates these different climates and business avenues that you can take. So understanding where you lie in that, who your market is, it gives us that space to find that success. Also, some of the regulation side, you can't just willy-nilly do anything. You really have to be able to operate within the regulations, and so that creates a barrier to entry. And then the climate between independent dispensaries versus vertical integration. Most states, if they're vertically integrated, have 100% vertical integration. So having these different business avenues, I think, really gives us an opportunity to understand what our business plan is. And if you go in that, if you go in with that understanding, you can find your foothold and success.
Anyone else have any thoughts about anything different about Ohio, or we can continue and David maybe address some of the biggest risks specific to Ohio or new markets that you've seen?
Yeah, I think Lo covered a lot of them. A lot of it is just eyes wide open, making sure that you're coming into the market. We're going to be, cultivating and processing and obviously with retail and having great product. You have to have a great product that everybody wants. You got to not get caught up in just THC, but just going for the lowest level promotion. I think the industry saw a bit, but from our business, 420 was let's discount the shit out of everything. And the last few years, we've taken a very different approach, and we've done very well by doing that, taking a different approach, focusing on different kind of promotions and not just going to the bottom line like a lot of people. So if you can focus on your brands and focus on your service and your business and the product that you're growing, you can overcome price. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's what we're going to be focused on as we come here.
Anything else specific to Ohio and newly launching?
I think in Ohio, if we've learned from all the other past markets and all the failures they've kind of gone through, and one is the best operators that are still thriving in the space or surviving in the space, I just say, I don't think any of us are thriving, but surviving in the space, is they put systems and culture before scale. I think if we're really going to be true to this plan, to the culture of what cannabis is, the culture is really what was baked into why cannabis has been such a successful illegal drug for the last 100 some odd years. And then the systems that you have in place, because you have to understand that any industry, but especially in cannabis, you're probably going to have an employee base that may not have the skill set that you may need for them to operate at a high level or without oversight. So having the systems and guardrails in place to ensure that profitability and cash flow is happening and repetitively is probably the biggest lesson, hopefully, that we're going to learn in Ohio. And Ohio has a more educated customer base. So I think we'll have a better time giving products to them that they can understand because they've been cultivating in the hills of Meigs County, Ohio, where Ethos Cannabis is located, for forever and a day.
Yeah. Sean, what do you think? Pacing growth when, how do you pace growth when, demand is very strong early on, but might shift down the road?
Yeah, I think as everybody's touched on here, the pattern we see in every emerging market is that operators tend to overinvest in infrastructure and supply before generating demand. So, you end up with great products, great locations, but no real customer, acquisition engine behind it. So, the only lever left is discounting or pricing. And discounting doesn't build, brand preference. It builds price sensitivity, and it trains, the market to wait for deals and discounts, right? So, Michigan's the cleanest case study of that. Over the past few years, we've seen huge price compression. I think flower's trading at like $2.50, $3 a gram, somewhere in there. And the operators who are, winning today are the ones that 2 or 3 years ago started investing in, customer acquisition, customer retention, marketing channels, so that they could fall back on, again, lifetime value, retention, and they didn't just have to rely on discounting and pricing when things got tough. And, the operators that only had pricing to fall back on are pretty much in Michigan non-existent or are being acquired. So I'd say the biggest lesson Ohio can learn from that is, in any emerging market, this window right now when, demand is very strong early on, that's the time to build your marketing infrastructure, your new customer acquisition, your retention pipelines, not the time to coast on it, right? Because eventually price will compress, there will be more competition and demand won't be as strong later on.
Thank you. Thank you. David, any thoughts about pacing growth?
I think that kind of coming back to the beginning a little bit is you need to have a game plan and understand where you think your revenue is going to be going so you can be smart about what you're doing from a staffing standpoint, what you're doing from the brands that you're building and that you're executing against. Just the only thing else that comes to mind just by listening to the folks and having talked to some of them is I think one thing from a culture standpoint that is missing in a lot of the industry, and we try real hard, is in this isn't super scientific or anything, you gotta have fun. This is a fun business and people should have fun, and we try and do that a lot. It sounds like you're doing that all the time, Bo, from talking to you. And it should be a fun business. Yes, we have to block and tackle well, we have to focus on all the numbers, but your team should have fun and your team should care about the product. And if you can do that from a cultural standpoint, you got a real good chance to win.
Thank you. Wonderful points. So scaling at some point is going to become a focus. So Sean, what does discipline scaling look like, in practice from an operator's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, for us, discipline scaling is about what you do today that impacts the business 12 to 24 months from now, right? So again, the operators that we've seen invest early in that marketing infrastructure wind up developing a compound advantage moving forward in any emerging market, because they develop really strong customer retention, right? And essentially, that customer retention is so important because it's what's gonna make your customers so much harder and more expensive to acquire when new competitors enter that market later on. So, retention really becomes that kind of moat that you put around your current customers in any emerging market. And, the most underutilized asset, I would say, in this whole equation is the online menu itself, right? So we're seeing 70 to 80% of purchase decisions happen when the customer is already on the menu. So that's the highest intent shopping moment in the entire customer journey. And right now, cannabis operators really aren't doing enough to take advantage of that moment and influence it, right? So for retailers, that comes down to, servicing your high margin, high profit, high priority products. And for a brand, that means kind of being visible when customers are actually deciding what to buy, right? So I think that at Surfside, with our on-site commerce media program, which enables brands to serve ads across the retail partner menus that they integrate with, we add that personalized layer of digital marketing at the point of purchase to increase basket size, conversion rate, average order value, which again really just helps tie your off-site demand generation with on-site conversion and, measure everything back to real sales.
Thank you. Lo, any thoughts on disciplined scaling and what that might look like in your experience?
I think that just like many of us have mentioned already, that this is at the end of the day a business, and so understanding that like it's not like you've struck gold. It's truly a business that you need to be operating with profit in mind and lean operations. So with respect to disciplined scaling, I always think about people, making sure that you're hiring the right people for the right roles. Turnover is expensive, so it comes down not only to cannabis culture, but also the culture that you're building within your company and the team that you're building. So I just think that people make everything go around, and so it's really important to build the right team. And then something that we talk about a lot in our team is start with why. So if your why is make money, oof, it's a tough road. But if you're in it for fun, for building.
I want to make money too. Don't get me wrong.
Oh no, that is definitely.
Just want to have fun doing it.
We gotta make money to keep going, right? But there's got to be more to that, because these other things need to influence your decisions, and starting with like the cannabis product that you're producing. What are you, a craft cannabis producer, or are you going to be a mass cannabis producer? There's room in the market for it all, but you need to understand where you fall in that line. And your purpose is at the heart of your business, and so from the top to the line people, like everybody needs to be on the same page about that and feel that same alignment with your values, with your goals. And again, money is part of that. We got to have money to keep going, but it is a tough road if that's all you've got. So disciplined scaling means lean operations, thinking about how to maintain your profit margin, and process. Process is so important to make sure that you're operating efficiently now, not just when you need to look at how to be more efficient and impact your margins. If you can start out in these very important years, which are these initial few years of adult use, and you can have a good profit margin now, it makes the rest of the years ahead a lot easier. And then the last thing is marketing spend. A lot of people in the beginning, when things are easy, when sales are coming through, cash flow feels good, you're cutting checks, you're willing to spend, whatever sounds good. It's going to be a lot harder down the line, and you're going to regret the spend that you might have willy-nilly spent early on.
Following on with that, and you've touched on a number of these points, but are there any operational decisions that come early on that you think have the biggest impact down the road? And
I will echo that, people and process.
People and process.
So like if you can have really efficient processes from the get-go, or have systems in place that are working, streamlining, your people can execute them well, that just makes everything else easier.
Gibran, any thoughts on operational decisions early on that help and maximize downstream?
Yeah, well, unfortunately or fortunately, I always have a thought. First of all, you're going to take that marketing spend laying down there? You're not going to push back on that? We need to spend a lot on marketing, right?
Yes.
I think, when you think about some of the pitfalls, I think we've all learned, and maybe I'm speaking to more of the guys in the room, we've been told for a long time that size doesn't matter, it's the motion in the ocean. And I think in cannabis, we need to kind of embrace that. It's not the size or the scale that you're able to build to, it's the quality at which you're able to kind of put product out. So I think if we kind of embody that same philosophy that size does not matter, I know that hurts some of us in this room, but size does not matter. It's about the profitability and the cash flow of the business that you are in. And then also making sure that understand that this is not a stable genetic. This is a very volatile genetic. So make sure you have things inside of your space, if you're a cultivator, that you are able to control all of the outbreaks that come with cannabis. Because that can be catastrophic failure if you do not have the systems and the people and processes in place that I've seen other cultivators kind of have to go through.
Thank you. David, let's follow up with you a bit. How should companies approach hiring or infrastructure or capacity planning differently than past cycles? Is there anything that could be helpful in Ohio?
Yeah, I think it's all discipline-based. We've put in some rigorous process in terms of when teams boil up and a lot of times well, we got a lot of work, we need more people. That's not the answer. The answer is, what do you need those people for? What are the objectives for that people over a period of time? So we've really put some process in that I think is really kind of making people think about the requests that they're making. And it's actually been very valuable in helping for future planning. So I think that and more rigorous interviewing process. I think we've heard process a number of times, but in terms of the people you hire, you really need to put the effort in, not just trying to fill a body, not just trying to fill a resume, as was said, but really trying to see, will this person fit in the company, and are you providing them clear direction, and do you have a clear purpose for why they are coming into your organization and what they're supposed to accomplish? I don't think we've evolved significantly on that. I think probably the whole industry needs to evolve on that too. A lot of work to do, but at least we're really, I think, putting a good effort around process regarding how we bring people in.
Lean operating structures, cross-functional teams, and if I could do it all over again, I would build all of our grows in a modular form. That way you can build as needed versus, building and then you got to fill all the canopy up.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? If not, we'll move on. We have about 5 minutes remaining, and I know we'll have some final thoughts. Let me take maybe a different kind of question. In light of rescheduling, many talk about 280 going away at some point. I want to ask a question maybe a little differently. If you had extra cash from the beginning because you weren't going to be paying taxes as a result of 280, where would you deploy that cash as an emerging company or in a new market? Is there any additional spends you would have made that you otherwise couldn't?
I'm sorry I'm talking. I feel like I'm talking. I'm stealing all the time.
Everyone's talking. Let's hear it. What you got to say?
I think we would have spent more from the door. I mean, if we didn't have to pay any 280 taxes, I probably would have cashed out and retired by now at some crazy multiple. But the first thing that I think that we probably should really take a gander at when we talk about 280E is I would spend more money on research. I think really understanding what this plant is capable of. I think we're scratching the surface. I think there's a lot of other medical efficacy applications that we can come up with the cannabis plant where we fight amongst each other. I think with more research, we would fight against big pharma. We would fight against alcohol. We fight against tobacco. We go against their market share. So I think research would probably be one of the biggest ones that we would look at trying to do. And I think brand development. I think if we had more money in the beginning, we would be able to spend more on creating a deeper cultural connection to the brands. But because we don't have that excess capital, we're not able to do that. And then I think the last one would be employee development. We are probably the worst industry in terms of internal development and upskilling our workforce in any industry that I can imagine. So I think all of us would love to spend more money of educating and developing our staff internally to help with that turnover thing that we said that was kind of happening before. And the last, I would probably spend more on education. Would probably be the last bucket there.
I just those are excellent. What I would also add on is more money in terms of consumer segmentation, understanding the consumer better, how they're looking at the product, and how we can deliver them more value of what they're looking at. I don't mean value from a price standpoint. I mean just ensuring that, which takes research as well, ensuring there's a focus on what every consumer needs. And just our industry is so, and Sean's working on a lot of this and a lot of work that they're doing, but our industry is so far behind traditional industries in terms of understanding their customer and planning for that go forward. I think I would have spent more money on that earlier.
I would have spent more money on education and marketing. I'm coming back around. But yeah, I think that in order to spread like the message and grow our market, education is so important to help people who, I mean, the majority of our market opportunity are people who have never used cannabis before. And so to be able to spend the money, that extra cash on education and supporting people and understanding what they may be looking for and how to get there would pay in spades. And then also some extra cash, I would have probably bought more quantities other than just the minimum quantity to get that better price.
Good. All right. Well, we have about 2 minutes left. Let's talk about some parting thoughts. And as you look forward, any advice to give operators, new operators in Ohio as they're starting out on this journey?
Yeah, I would say, Gibran might not love this, but stop thinking so much like a cannabis company and start thinking more like a CPG retailer. Every
I'm thinking like a CPG retailer, start thinking like a cannabis company.
every retailer worth its salt, Amazon, Walmart, Sephora, they all figured out a very long time ago that the most valuable asset that they have is their digital storefront. So the ability to monetize that, build a marketing infrastructure, and then track everything back to sales efficiently is what's going to help operators in Ohio scale the most effectively in an emerging market, and it's what we can help out with at Surfside.
David, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's really covered all the points in terms of just, discipline and really being focused and really understanding the data, understanding your numbers, understanding your customer, understanding your brand, understanding your team, and really just all staying focused on, creating a mission that is, that this plant is special and what we do for people is special. I'm sure everybody has met someone that they've been able to help in terms of, with a recommendation on product, whether someone has anxiety or pain or they just want to have some fun. And that's a key part of the industry is just, I totally agree on the culture piece and what this product can do for people and just always having that front and center and then combining that with discipline, I think you can have a great business.
Great. Lo?
I just want to add one other thing that cannabis has taught me that it's not just black and white. It's not this and that. It's not medical or recreational. Unless the DEA is asking, it's medical. That we...
You started filing your forms too, huh?
Yeah, I did. But that we can be keeping the culture while also thinking like real businesses and like CPG, and that when you find the magic of it all, that's really the operators that are sticking around, that are finding success, because we know who we are and we know who we're serving.
Gibran, final thoughts?
Real quick, I just simplify it this way. Understand that there's two types of games. You have the definitive game, you have the infinite game. Definitive games are baseball, basketball, you have outs and there's rules and regulations around it. It's very clear cut. Cannabis is an infinite game. There really is no rules, there really is no regulations that are standard, so you have to be flexible, be moldable to everything that's going to come to you, and understand that just because you lose today doesn't mean you can't win tomorrow, so be resilient. And then honestly, if you're trying to come into the industry now, this is the best time for an operator to come into the industry because you've learned from all of our failures sitting up here on this stage of what not to do.
Thank you. So Lo, Sean, David, Gibran, appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, let's give it up for our last panel. Didn't I tell you they would be wonderful? Thank you to Scaling Without Breaking. What an amazing crowd we have in here.